Ron Haviv photographed the riot in the Capitol, the insurrection in the Capitol, live from within the mob. Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Really extraordinary photos that you've seen about what happened with that Capitol Hill insurrection siege, the mob, came from Ron Haviv. He's a contributor to the New Republic and a war photographer who embedded with the mob during the Capitol riot. He writes for the New Republic, newrepublic.com. His Twitter handle is Ron Haviv, H-A-V-I-V, or at New Republic, but I would say at Ron Haviv. And Ron, welcome to the program, and thanks so much for being with us. It seems to me that there are at least three groups of people who were participating in this. There were what I refer to as kind of the suckers, the people who believed Donald Trump when he said that Barack Obama wasn't a legitimate American and therefore wasn't legitimately elected, who believed Donald Trump 4 years ago when he said 3 million illegal immigrants voted for Hillary Clinton and the elections are rigged, and who believed him this time and showed up in good faith, thinking that the country was, something nasty was going on. Number one. Number two, there were the people who are just, looking for a riot, looking, the Yahoo wannabe militia Confederate cosplayers, basically. And then number three, you had people who were serious, trained, armed professionals, essentially, who were on a mission to kill or capture people in the Capitol and giving Trump the power to invoke the end of habeas corpus and therefore the end of the American Republic, as Lincoln did during the Civil War. What are your thoughts on those divisions and what you saw?
Thank you. It's good to be on the show. I think it was definitely you could divide it up to some degree to those groups. I mean, definitely the pure believers in Trump who came first to the ellipse and then marched to the Capitol, and people that were not specifically there to engage in violence, but to show their numbers and hope that there would be some sort of response. Then you had Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, First America, and other people like that who were there to do the same thing, but to kind of take it one step further. In terms of your grouping of the third, in terms of sort of professionals and people that really knew what they were doing, probably I would say to some degree they were there, but certainly when you look at what happened, they certainly didn't execute anything very well. The most of it that was going on, the kind of the clashes, plus the entering of the building, whether through windows or through open doors, was a mix of all of the different people. And when you see, in actuality, the amount of violence that took place, while dramatic without question, certainly could have been a lot worse from both sides. The protesters themselves could have been a lot more violent, and certainly the response from the Capitol Police and others could have been also a lot more violent. So I think, we are pretty lucky that more people were not hurt and more people did not die during this conflict.
I saw a post, and I can't vouch for the accuracy of this, which is always dangerous, but Team Trump News is posting over on Parler, and this was posted 20 hours ago, presumably from Donald Trump. Dear Patriots, when Nancy Pelosi contacted the Joint Chiefs to request the nuclear codes be kept from me, it appears she committed a seditious act. Her attempts to interfere in my administration are a national security threat. We are looking at the various federal criminal statutes we'll use to charge her. Some of the penalties include up to 20 years in prison and in some cases the death penalty. We also have evidence that she has connections to the Chinese Communist Party, which will lead to additional charges. I mean, whether he wrote this specifically or not, it sure looks like the Trump administration is not backing down in this. When you were part of that mob, when you were swept into this whole thing, did you hear anything about what might happen on January 20th? It seems to me like Donald Trump announcing to his followers that he won't be there on the 20th was almost his way of saying, okay, do what you want here.
Well, yeah, I think the 20th and the days before are completely up in the air. I don't think we really have any idea exactly what's going on. There's certainly lots of conversations about, January 17th, 17 being the number of the letter Q. There's going to be things happening that day. There's been a call for 1 million militia march on the 20th to block Biden and his administration from entering the White House. I think it's completely, we're in unknown territory here. And then, of course, the response, there will be thousands of National Guard on the street, plus all the other groups trying to protect the inauguration. And I think based on what we saw, that even though when everybody seems to know what's going to happen, nobody really knows what is going to happen. So we're really in uncharted territory here.
Did you have any conversations with any of the people who were there during the siege of the Capitol?
I didn't because I was trying very hard not to sort of identify myself as a member of the media, given that they are obviously very anti-media. During the speech earlier that day, the president blamed the media numerous times for everything that was going on, and of course, numerous media were attacked and stopped from doing their work. But what I can say from the conversations that I overheard and the chanting that I heard, they were very deliberate. They were very much felt like this was their house. They thought that the police were traitors. They thought that they should be allowed to do what they want because they felt and believed that Black Lives Matter, when they protested, were allowed to do whatever they want, which of course isn't true. But it was really kind of very much, they completely believed in what they were doing. The only issue was the majority of people, when they entered, had no idea what to do when they were inside, which is why you sort of had people kind of doing the tour. You had people talking to the police and asking where the bathroom was. You had people going to the police and asking where Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi's office were. It was like a very surreal scene. We had people dressed up as pandas, people dressed up as shamans, mixed in with, very seriously angry people screaming at the police, looking for Mike Pence at one point. There was a kind of a mix of many different things, kind of depending on the hallway that you went down or the different part of the building that you were in, you'd be experiencing a completely different act of protest, sedition, depending on whatever winds up being defined as their actions.
I understand there were several hours where the congressman from Maryland, Steny Hoyer, was begging the Republican governor of Maryland to send, which is right next door. I mean, Washington, D.C., parts of Washington, D.C. used to be parts of Maryland. It literally, right across the river or right across the road, begging them to send the National Guard in, and the governor of Maryland saying, I can't do that without authorization from the Department of Defense, and they're not answering their phone and they're refusing to give me authorization. So there were several hours there where there was basically no federal response at all. And then when the FBI went in to take out the body of that woman who died, I think there was 18 FBI agents who took her out. They didn't go back into the building. They left it alone for another hour. How long were you in there, and what was your sense of what actually turned the tide? When did it lose steam?
It lost steam basically when I think the National Guard arrived and other reinforcements arrived, and the police felt that they had enough power to push out the protesters. I think before that, they made a concerted decision not to be arresting people because that would just basically anger people more and cause more problems. They couldn't defend any territory that they had. And so they basically were waiting for what should have been there from the beginning, just more forces and forces that were better equipped. I mean, the Capitol Police were using pepper spray, which hurt having been sprayed along with the other people, but certainly was not enough to defend the building or stop people from going, and flashbangs and so on. And again, going back to this idea that it could have been a lot more violent, to their credit, I mean, while of course one woman was shot, they had the opportunity, obviously, to open fire on these protesters who, for the most part, seemed unarmed in terms of ammunition and guns and so on. They had sticks and other things, and obviously other people were found later to have more weapons. But basically, this could have turned into a very serious mass casualty event. And I think that both sides, while this was incredibly crazy and violent, this could have been much worse. And so I think when they finally, towards around 4 o'clock, once they determined that there was going to be a curfew and that was set up and more people arrived, they were able to then physically push people by just having more people. And I think also the majority of protesters at that point were tired. It had been already a long day.
It was what, 4 hours on at that point. And
Yeah, exactly.
Ron Haviv, you can read about it. The headline is "A War Photographer Embeds with the Capitol Hill Mob" over at newrepublic.com. And you can tweet Ron at Ron, Haviv. Ron, thanks so much for dropping by.